it's Jennifer from Flux. In this video, I'm going to show you how to crochet this gorgeous Granny Flutter Tank. This is a super easy project to work up, and it's a lovely little summer top. You could layer it as we move into the cooler months, and this is very easy to construct and to stitch up. We're going to be using some really basic stitches like half double crochets and double crochet stitches, and we're going to make 2 solid granny squares and sandwich them together. Then we're going to be later on in the video adding some straps to the top of our tank, and then we're going to add some ruffles to give it a little bit of interest on the shoulders. So this is such a cute little top, and you can really customize it by making your square just larger or smaller depending on what size you need it to be. And we'll talk about customization throughout the video, because you can customize the circumference, the height. You can really customize the length of the straps depending on how snug you need them. And then even the ruffle, you can work more or less rows. We're going to be going this way with the ruffle, so working more or less rows will make it more subtle or more ruffly if you like. So the finished piece has a circumference of 31 inches around, but again, you can change that depending on what you need. The height of the square itself, this tube part that goes around your body, mine is 15.5 inches tall from the bottom to the top. And then the straps themselves, from where this tube starts and straight up, are 5 inches tall. And then our total height is 20.5 inches tall. That is from the bottom of the tube, the top here, all the way straight up to the top of the strap. I didn't measure to the top of the ruffle because it changes quite a bit. I did the top of the strap because that's what's actually going to be sitting on your body. Okay, so we're going to learn how to start with these squares first. We're going to start with the squares. Then we're going to seam the squares together on the sides. Next, we're going to learn how to add the straps and seam them to the piece. We're going to pick up the stitches and crochet and then seam them to the back. So go around and then seam. Finally, we're going to add the ruffles, and all along the way we'll customize all this. I'm going to show you how to do all that. And then at the very end, we're going to do the finish work and finish up the piece. So let's jump right in and get started. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, a tape measure will be super helpful to get the size that you need. You'll need some stitch markers. We're just going to use them to kind of pin it together before we seam it up. So if you don't have stitch markers, that's totally fine. You can use little pieces of scrap yarn and just tie them. And then for our hook and yarn, we're going to be using a 4mm G crochet hook. This is my Furl Streamline. I'll put the link down below if you'd like to get one for yourself. And let's look at our yarn here. This is a yarn from Knit Crate, and it is a linen yarn, which is fun. It's actually a blend. This is called Vita Lana Linen Jewel. This was a special one that they did with our Maker Life. And it is a 50% superwash merino, 30% linen, 20% silk. So it's really soft, and it has like a nice kind of warm weather feel to it, and a nice sheen as well. This is fingering weight yarn, and each skein of this is 400 yards. So I have 800 yards of yarn here. We're not going to use every last bit of it, but if you need to substitute, just look for a fingering weight yarn. And just as a side note, if you do get this from Knit Crate or something similar, this particular yarn is hand wash only, and it does come in dye lots. So I have here 800 yards of the superwash merino linen silk blend. So that should be a really nice, soft little top. And as a side note too, the colorway is called Oasis. It's like a nice pale aqua color. So Vita Lana Linen Jewel is what I'll be using. Okay, so I have my yarn cakes and my hook, and we're ready to go. I switched to a dark background because this yarn is very light in color. Also, as a side note, at the beginning of the video, we had some skeins, and I've wound them into cakes. Now, if you have a skein and you don't have a fancy ball winder or Swift or anything like that, you can, of course, wrap them into a ball, and that works just as well. And when you buy yarn, a lot of times shops will offer yarn caking services. So always feel free to ask if you're not sure. So I'm going to slide one of these out of the way, and we're going to grab our yarn. Now I wound it so that it pulls from the center, which is always fun. It makes it super easy to use. And I am going to just get set up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a solid granny square. And if you've never done that before, it's similar to a traditional granny square, but instead of working in like groups of double crochets to give it that like open look, it's going to be more of a solid look, okay? So what we're going to do, now let me zoom way in so you can see what I'm doing here. What we're going to do to begin is put a slip knot on our hook. So I have my G hook that I mentioned earlier. So wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop, bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook, bring up a loop, and tighten. Next, we're going to do a starting chain that we're going to transform into a ring that we'll work our stitches into. So we need to do that by chaining 4. So to make a chain, wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we're going to join with a slip stitch to create a ring. So you're going to go back here to that first chain you made, the chain farthest from your hook, and we're going to work a slip stitch to create a ring. So insert the hook into that farthest chain from the hook, bring up a loop, then you're going to bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook, and we now have a ring. And I like to just go in here and open it up so that I can work my stitches in there a little bit more comfortably, okay? We also have a tail. I'm going to hold the tail along the edge as we work that first round, and it'll weave it in as we go and save you a little step. Okay, so then what we're going to do is start round 1. To make round 1, we're going to start by chaining 5 this time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we're going to go down into the center of this ring and work 3 double crochet. So to make a double crochet, wrap the yarn around the hook, insert it into the center of the ring, and bring up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on the hook. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. So that was 1 double crochet. Then we're going to work, we're doing a total of 3, so we need to do 2 more. So work your second double crochet, and then work your third double crochet, just like that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do this a couple of more times, and we're going to create a little tiny square. So what we want to do is chain 2. That's going to be like the in-between corner space of our square. And then we're going to work 3 more double crochets into the center of the ring. So 1, 2, and 3 double crochets into the center of the ring. Okay, then we're going to create another corner and work 2 chains. 1, 2. Then we're going to go back into the center of the ring and work 3 more double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Just like that, okay? We have almost the whole little square done, but we need to finish it up. So to finish, what we're going to do is chain 2 once again, 1, 2, and we're sort of back at the beginning here. I'm still holding my tail along the edges I work to keep that woven in, and then we're just going to work 2 more double crochets into the center of the ring. So 1 and 2, and then to close our round, what we're going to do is, remember we had that chain 5 at the beginning of the round? It actually serves 2 purposes. The first 3 chains you see here count as a double crochet. So that's why we only did 2 double crochets at the end here. And those other 2 chains serve as the spaces like we did in these other areas, okay? So what you're going to do to close the round is count 3 chains up. 1, 2, 3. And that third chain up, we're going to join with a slip stitch to close the round. So in the third chain up, insert your hook into that chain, bring up a loop. Now you're going to bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook. And now we have a little tiny square. It looks like a little plus sign, okay? So then what we're going to do to begin the next round is we need to slip stitch over to the right spot. So if your hook is not, we're almost to the right spot, but see this first space? Sometimes when you have linen yarn, you might get these little different fibers through it. But anyway, we're almost to the right spot. We need to be in this corner space, but we're not quite there. We're next to it, okay? So what you're gonna do is slip stitch over to the right spot. So go ahead and insert your hook into that corner space, bring up a loop, bring that loop through the loop already on your hook, and now we're in the right spot, okay? So before I start on the round, what I like to do is get this tail out of the way so it doesn't confuse me or get in my way. So that tail we wove in as we went along, go ahead and give that a strong tug to tighten it up. And we're going to take our scissors and just snip it and just get it out of the way. It's up to you. You can leave it there if you want to, but I like to get it out of the way. Okay, so let's get back to this. What we're going to do next to begin the round is chain 5 once again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then in that same space, we're going to work 2 double crochet. So 1 and 2. And that is our the beginnings of our corner. We're gonna go all the way around and then finish that corner when we get to the other side. Okay, then what we're gonna do is you can see that first little grouping there. We're gonna work a double crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. So see these 3 double crochets? Each of them has a stitch at the top. So see these loops at the top? You have your post, that long tall part of the stitch, and then you have the little loop at the top. We're going to work into that loop. So we're going to work a double crochet into that first stitch, a double crochet into the next stitch, and a double crochet into that last stitch. Okay? Then we're going to work our corner once again. So we're going to work into that corner space that we created in the last round. We're going to work 2 double crochet, 1 and 2. Then we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then in that same space we're going to work 2 double crochet, 1 and 2. All right, we're going to do the side the same way. We're going to work a double crochet in each of these next 3 stitches, okay? So double crochet into the first stitch, double crochet into the next stitch, and double crochet into the third stitch. Okay, you can see we're starting to get a nice square shape. All right, the next corner, we're going to do the corners the same way. And as a side note, as we build our square, we'll always work the corners the same way, no matter how big our square is or what round we're on. Okay, so the corners are always 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, and then a chain 2, 1, 2, and then 2 double crochet all in that same corner space. So 1 and 2, just like that. All right, we're going to work the side like we've been doing. If you notice, I sort of slid my corner over a little bit, and that helps me see these stitches a little bit better. So work a double crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, we're going to work the corner the same way we will for the rest of the square and how we've been doing it all along. 2 double crochet, 1 and 2. Then we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then 2 more double crochet in the same corner space, 1 and 2. Okay, we're going to work a double crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, and 3. I'm just gonna, that one might be a little snug because it's where the round started. Sometimes there's a little bit of snugness there. So we're back at the beginning of the round and we just need to work in that corner space where we began, because remember we worked half the corner. We're going to work 1 more double crochet into that corner space. And then we're going to work, you can kind of slide it over if you need to, and then we're going to work Into the third chain up, 1, 2, 3, we're going to work a slip stitch to close the round. You can see we have a lovely solid granny square, and these are very versatile, and I like these for garments because they're a little less with the decorative holes. They have a lot more solid coverage. Okay, so for the rest of our square, we're going to keep going with our square. I'm going to take you through one more round because I want to show you how the sides change. Now, the corners are going to stay the same. We always work the corners the same way. But as your square grows and as you work more and more rounds, because we're going to take this pretty big, your sides will increase in number. So the last round we did 3 side stitches. Now we're going to be doing 7 because our square grew on both sides as we worked the corners. What we're going to do is what we did before. We're almost at the right spot with our hook, but we need to get to that corner space. So just work a slip stitch into the corner space, and now our hook is in the correct position, okay? So to begin the round, chain 5, once again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I just wanted to point out, we're just repeating round 2, but I wanted to show you how the side stitches are worked and how it grows, okay? So in that same corner space, work 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, and then we're going to work a stitch into each stitch all the way across until we get to our corner space again. Same thing we did before, but as you can see, there's a lot more of them, okay? So just make sure you work a stitch into each one. And you can kind of keep track of that by looking at your post, the long, tall part of the stitch and the little loop at the top. So every time you see a post, work something into that little loop at the top, okay? So we're gonna work a double crochet, double crochet in the next stitch, double crochet in the next stitch, double crochet in the next stitch, all the way across. Whoops, I went into too many loops there. All right, and then we're at the end of this side here. And just to give you a count, we had our corner and then we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 this time on each side, all the way around. Okay, work your corner the same way. 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, chain 2, and then 2 more double crochet in that same space to work the corner. Same thing as before. If you need to scoot your corner over just a little bit, you can, just to kind of open that up and show you where your stitches are. And then you'll work your stitches across and your corner the same. So let's do one more side together. Work your side stitches, 1 double crochet per stitch all the way across. You can see how our square is already growing because we are increasing the number of stitches on each side, okay? Once again, work your corner the same way. 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, chain 2, and I'm picking up speed a little because we've done this before, and 2 double crochet all in the same space, okay? All right, so I'm going to continue around with my square, working it the same way we did for these first 2 sides. I'm going to work the next 2 sides the same way. When we get almost to the end of the round, we'll rejoin and we'll close up this round, and then we'll be ready to create the biggest square that we need for our piece. Okay, just coming up to the end of the round, and we have that last stitch we're going to work into. And then once again, to finish off the round, we're going to work our last double crochet into the corner space. Like same thing we did before. We're just sort of reviewing on this round. And then I like to slide it over just a little bit so I can see those chains, because we're going to count 1, 2, 3 chains up, join with a slip stitch to close the round. So insert your hook in that 3rd chain up, bring up a loop. Now bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. and our square has grown. So what you want to do is for the rest of your square, and this is a personal preference, but when I make each round of a square, a solid granny square or traditional granny square, I like to sharpen up the corners. And you can do that with your hand, or sometimes with your hook. You can take like the handle or the tip of the hook and just kind of like sharpen up your squares there. And I think it adds a little bit to to give it that nice square look. Also, as we get along further in the project, you can block it as well. So what we're gonna do next is when we rejoin, we're gonna make 2 of these squares. So when you're making your squares, you'll want to fit it custom to you. And what you're gonna do is the 2 squares, we're going to have one that covers the front of you and one that covers the back of you. This will go across the bust and around the underarm to the back. So it's going to make a tube around your body, like a strapless tube. So that when we rejoin with our 2 granny squares, so you want to make it big enough that you can slip it on like a tube around your body. You don't want it to be a tight tube. And it really depends if you want to make it more fitted and snug, or if you want to make it kind of loose and flowy. It's totally up to you, and that will depend on how big you make your square, okay? So what I would recommend, I use stitch markers and clothespins a lot when I make garments. I like garments that are easy. If you've joined me for any of them before, I like to do like a simple shape and seam it together. So that's what we're doing here. But you're going to make your first square cover the front of you, the other square cover the back of you, and it's going to make a tube. So it's going to go over the bust, under the arm, and like around you. I'm doing kind of like a mini version here, like a doll-sized one at this time. But what I like to do is when I think I maybe have made it big enough, I like to clip it and pop it on, see how it looks. Either with clothespins or some little stitch markers, or even like a scrap piece of yarn. You can just tie it together. So what we're going to do is go ahead and keep working your rounds until you have 2 squares. So you're going to start a second square, and we have lots of yarn here. We're going to make 2 squares. The first one covers the front of you. The second one covers the back of you. We're not going to seam them yet, but when we rejoin, I'll have 2 squares. I'll give you a little bit more information about the dimensions that I got. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to seam our squares together on either side to make a tube. So it'll have an opening at the top and the bottom. And then we're going to add a little bit of a top edge, some straps, and then some optional ruffly flutter sleeves. Okay? So, but at this time, we're just going to work on our squares. So just make sure your squares cover the front and back of you comfortably. You don't want it to be too tight, or your stitches will stretch and distort. You want it to fit comfortably around you. And if you want a little bit of drape, make your squares a little bit bigger. If you want it to be a little like loose and airy. If you want it to be snug, make them fit more to your body. But you want to be able to slip it on and off. Okay, you don't want it to be too tight. So go ahead and work on your squares. When we rejoin, I'm going to have 2 big squares here, and we're going to move on to the next part of seaming them together. Just coming up to the end of my square here. Last double crochet, and then I'm going to join with a slip stitch to close the round. Now I have done 1 square, and I've done a whole other square. So let me just zoom out so you can see. I have a little bit of yarn here, and that is going to be for our straps and the little flutters. As a side note, these were cakes, and I had a cake cuff around it, so everything is still really nice and neat. Those are from City Girl Country Girl Yarns. I can put the link down below. Just let me know in the comments if you'd like to see the link to that. Now, what we're going to do is fasten off. I'm going to give you a quick measurement of what I got. But obviously, your square may be a different size because we're making this to fit. Okay, so I just cut the yarn, and I'm going to wrap the yarn around the hook and pull it through the loop to fasten off. And I also have my second square. Now we made the squares exactly the same size, the same number of rounds, and I'm going to just show you in just a minute. So do the same on that one, cut the yarn, fasten off, and Grab my tape measure. Now this isn't blocked or anything, so I'm going to give you that. I don't plan on blocking this, but if you want to block yours, please feel free to do that. Now I grab my tape measure, and this is measuring, about 16 inches across, okay? And then I just wanted to also show you that we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 rounds per square. Okay, so our squares are identical. Okay, the next thing we need to do is seam up the sides. We're going to create a tube next. So when you're doing this, you'll want to be mindful of the right side versus the wrong side. The right side is the side that faced you as you worked all of your rounds. The wrong side is going to be the other side, and you can sort of see a little bit of a difference here of how they look. They look a little bit different. So when we seam it though, we want it to be inside out. So we want to take our first square and put the right side up, take our second square and put the right side down so that the right sides are facing one another and they're kind of inside out, okay? So what we're going to do is stack our squares and get them lined up. They don't have to be perfect. We're just going to be seaming. And then what we're going to do is we're going to seam down one side and we're going to seam down the other side. So grab a tapestry needle, and I'm just going to turn this just to make my life a little bit easier here. And then grab some of your yarn that you had. You should have some yarn here. And I'm going to cut a piece, about 24 inches long, give or take. I'm just guessing. Just a nice long piece of yarn. And then what we can do is thread our tapestry needle. And we're just going to start down one side here. I'm going to line up my corners. And because we did the same number of rounds for each square, there's going to be the same number of stitches down each side. So we're going to seam our first side, and I'm going to go right in those corner spaces here of our square, starting on the bottom left here, and I'm just going to tie it right on, okay? And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom in so you can see up close how I'm going to do this. We're going to use a whip stitch. If you're not familiar with that, it's a nice invisible seam, and it's kind of like a spiral through your work. So let's zoom way in, and hang on, let me just fix my camera here. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sandwich these pieces together. Okay, we're going to sandwich them together so that the stitches are lined up. Now when you go in with your stitches, make sure for your first layer of your sandwich that you pick up 2 loops for that stitch. And then the next layer of your sandwich, you want to pick up 2 loops. Okay, that way everything stays nice and neat and uniform. Okay, so put your needle in there and just bring it through. We're going to worry about all the tails at the very end, okay? When we're done our straps and everything, okay? So that's our first stitch. Now go in through the next one. Make sure to pick up both loops of that stitch on your layers, and then just send your needle through, okay? So we're just going to do this all the way across. Work a stitch into each layer and go nice and slow. You'll want your finished work to be nice and neat and beautiful and show off your fabulous crochet work that you spent so much time on. So just make sure you go through both layers. And then when you've done a few stitches, before you get all the way across, when you've done a few stitches, what you'll want to do is, we can do that right now and I'll show you. You'll want to just take a quick peek and open this up and just make sure that it looks how you want it to look, okay? Make sure everything is nice and neat looking and nothing is going on before you get too far, okay? So I'm going to continue seaming all the way across and we'll rejoin in just a moment. Okay, just coming up to the end here, I'm at the corner space once again, so I'm just going to do the same thing I did when I started. Now when you get to your last stitch, don't pull the loop all the way through. Leave a little loop there and then run your needle through and create a knot, and you can do that once or twice. Now this is a garment, so you'll want to make sure your knots are nice and strong. I'll put a couple in there. And then while your needle is threaded, I know we said we'd take care of these ends later, but you can go ahead and weave that end in if you like. And the other ones we'll take care of though. Okay, I'm just gonna run that end in there. And then what we're gonna do is repeat on the other side. Okay, so let me zoom back out so I can show you what we have here. We now have a nice seam on this side, and if we open it up and peek, it looks very, very nice. It's a very nice looking seam. Okay, so we're going to close this back up, and then directly across, so they're going to be parallel seams. We're going to seam this side next. So we want the top of our tube to be open and the bottom, so we can pull it over. And so let's do the same thing here. We're going to line it back up and just repeat seaming on that side as well. Okay, we're coming up to the end of our seam here. And I'm just going to go right in that corner space like I did at the beginning of our seam as well. Okay, so once again, leave a little loop, go in and make your knot. And I like to do that once or twice just to make it nice and strong. Okay, and then once again, you can just go ahead right here and there and straighten everything out and weave that end in while it's still on your needle here. Just go right through there. Okay, let's give it a little trim and a snip. And I'm just going to straighten this seam out a little bit. Okay, so now I'm just going to zoom out again. We're going to turn this right side out. And here is the body of our tank top. It's getting very exciting. Okay, so we need to put some straps on this, okay? We have just like a tube now, okay? So what I would like to do is, now you can use a scrap piece of yarn or what have you, but the fact that we used a square makes this very easy to kind of map out where we want our straps. So what I would do is grab a couple of stitch markers. We're just going to do like the front straps first. We're going to make 2 straps and we're going to crochet them right onto our squares and make the straps, and then later we're going to seam them to the back of our tank top, okay? So let's do a little bit of planning because that will make a big difference. I'm going to spin this around. Now this is the top. I'm just going to work on it upside down. What you'll want to do is figure out a couple of things. How big do you want your straps to be? How wide, rather. And then where do you want them to be located? So you might want to pop your tank top on and just kind of like see where they are. But I'm going to make mine, I'm going to count a few stitches in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to go right in there with my stitch marker. And then we're going to establish some width. See, this will be around you, so you don't want it to be right on the edge because it'll kind of be in like the underarm. So you want it to kind of come in a little bit. So I want my straps to be, about 2 inches or so. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so go right in that. I'm going into the space on here just to mark it. And that is where my strap's going to be on this side. So then you want to do the same thing. Now I came in 6 on this side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Throw a stitch marker in there. And then I did 8 in between. Actually, I want to switch my colors because I'm going to switch my colors actually because I did purple to start. I don't want to confuse myself. And then I'll do this coral color on the other side of the strap. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that way they'll be the same width. Now before you start crocheting, you might want to like pop this on or just kind of visualize where these are going to be just to make sure they're absolutely where you want them to be. Okay, so I actually ended up moving mine a little bit. I moved mine 4 more stitches, these purple outer ones. I moved them 4 more stitches on either side inward. And then I put again, 8 stitches in between. So I slid mine around. So it just goes to show you might want to, once you try it on or measure it a little bit, you might want to slide things. I thought they were a little bit too far spaced out. So I ended up doing 12 stitches and then placed my first marker, and then 8 stitches and placed my second marker. So just a little bit of adjustment, and that happens when you make wearables. Totally fine if you need to do that. Okay, so once again, we're going to grab our yarn and we're going to create some straps. We're going to do the straps first, and then we're going to add the little flutter sleeves onto them, okay? So we're going to leave our stitch markers in for now, and what we want to do, that first one on the right, either strap is fine, you can start on either strap, but that first stitch marker, I'm going to start with my left strap and the rightmost stitch marker on my left strap, okay? So mine is this one right here. I'm going to insert my hook right into that space here, hook the new yarn on, bring it through, and then I'm just going to tie it right on. We are going to switch our stitches to a half double crochet for our straps. It'll make them a little bit more sturdy, and hopefully, you know, to hold the top and to, as you're wearing it, okay? So I tied the yarn right into that space. We're going to insert our hook into the space, bring up a loop, and chain 2. 1 and 2. And actually, let me zoom in a little bit more so you can see. Okay, hop over to the next space, and we're going to work a half double crochet into the next space. So wrap the yarn around the hook, insert it into that space, bring up a loop, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through all 3 loops on your hook. Do that in the next space, and the next space, next space, all the way across. We're just establishing our straps, okay? And we're going to do that, and until we get to the space with our marker, okay? And I'm just leaving these markers in for now. It'll help us. Okay, so work that last stitch in that other stitch marker space, okay? So now we have a strap established. So all we need to do now for the rest of the strap and on the other side is work rows of half double crochets. So all you're going to do for the rest of the strap until it's as long as you want it to be, and then we're going to seam it onto the other side here. But you're going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and then we're going to turn our work, and then you'll be on the inside of your piece here, and you're just going to work a half double crochet in the first stitch and in every stitch across, okay? So working in that first stitch, next stitch, and we're just going to do that all the way across, okay? So keep going across with that, and then when your strap is as long as you would like it to be, you can take your tape measure and measure how long you would like it to be. And then look, we have our last, this was our turning chain. So in the topmost chain of our turning chain, we're going to also work a half double crochet, okay? So you can see a strap is starting to emerge. Very cool. So you can take your tape measure, or you can just keep popping it on as your strap gets longer and see where it is. You don't want it to be loose because it'll slide off and not look as nice, but you don't want it to be so tight that it's like yanking the squares that we made up. You want it to sort of be like a halfway in between, nice and snug, but not tight, okay? So you're just going to continue working your rows of the strap, chain 2, turn your work, same thing we've been doing before. And then we're going to work a half double crochet into that first stitch, that very first stitch, and in every stitch across. So keep going with your strap, and when we return, I'm going to share the measurements that I got for my strap, but you'll want to, of course, make yours the length that fits you or the person that you're making it for, okay? So keep going with your strap until it's as long as you would like it to be, and we are going to rejoin in just a moment and finish up these straps. So, and then once again, locate that topmost chain of your turning chain, and then just work a half double crochet in there. So you can see we have a little strap now, okay? So keep going with your strap and we'll rejoin in just a moment. Just working that last stitch of the strap here, and I went ahead and did both straps, so we can just go ahead and sew those on. Let me move my hook and zoom out a little bit so you can see here. So before we departed, we put our stitch markers. So I went ahead and worked both of my straps, and each one is 12 inches long. Now, you may get a different measurement that you need depending on how it fits you, but I went for 12 inches for both of them, okay? And as you can see, they're within that stitch marker. So the next thing we're gonna do, and because I did mine both at the same time, you don't have to do this, but I left some yarn here at the end. So all I need to do is fasten off, and then I have a nice long tail to sew it onto the other side, okay? So I pulled out a bunch of yarn so that I could do that later to show you. Okay, so what I want to do now is I'm going to show you how to sew these straps onto the other side. So go ahead, I left myself my loop here. So what we're going to do is fasten off. So wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through the loop, and then we're just going to pull that tail. Now this tail is super, super long. You don't need all this, but I like to give myself some extra. And I'm actually, to make my life a little easier when I sew this, I'm actually going to trim it. I gave myself a really long tail. Okay, so grab your tapestry needle, and we're going to thread our tapestry needle, just like that. And then all we're going to do is be careful not to twist your strap. And we're going to kind of flip it over to the other side. So what we're going to do is on the other side, we're going to just line our strap up, and we're just going to sandwich it together, and we're going to do that same whip stitch that we did for the sides, okay? So you're just going to go into both layers with your tail and just go right on across. And because we're using matching yarn, it will blend nice and neat, and our strap will be attached. Now take your time and do one whip stitch per stitch of your sandwich layers of your strap here, but we're just going to take it all the way across, and I'm going to just show you the entire thing here. And just make sure that you're going into 2 loops of each layer to make sure that if you go into just one loop of a layer, it will pull and distort your stitch a little bit. And then I like to just put one more extra stitch at the end, and then like we did for our other seam, leave a little loop, send your needle through, and you can just kind of like reinforce that a little bit. And I like to do that twice just because it's a strap and there's going to be more stress on it than other parts of this project. And also, while your tail is woven in and it's all set up, go ahead and weave that tail in just while you have it on there on your tapestry needle. And then what we're going to do is do the same thing for the other strap as well. So I just gave that a snip, and now our strap is on there. Okay, so here's my other side. I'm going to just flip it around and do the same exact thing that I did for the other strap. Okay, both of our straps are now sewn on, and it's really looking like a tank top. So the next thing we want to do is add our ruffles to our straps. Now, you don't have to do this. This is completely optional, but I love the way it looks. So if you don't want the ruffles, just skip on ahead to the finish work where we're going to weave in the ends, etc. But if you want to do the ruffles, stick with me. So we're going to grab our yarn ball once again because we're going to be crocheting the ruffles right onto the strap. So let's start with our left strap, and what we want to do is we're going to add the ruffle to this outer edge. We're going to leave this alone, okay? So what you need to do is open up your strap so you're kind of looking at it from the top view, and I'm going to sort of scoot everything out of the way. Now we're going to look at this top edge here, and we're going to start at the right side. So this would be the back of the tank top. We're going to start back here, and what you can do, if this helps, is grab one of your stitch markers. You can leave this one here because this shows where the end of it is, but you can throw a stitch marker in and just like help show you where to begin. Okay, so where that strap was attached to the square, you can mark that. Okay, so grab your hook once again, and I'm going to zoom in. Now we're going to be crocheting down the side of our strap, so it's not going to be really distinct stitches like in other areas where we've worked this, but we're just going to go along each one of these side holes, and we're going to create a ruffle. And what we're going to do, how we're going to do that is we're going to put many stitches in each stitch so that it sort of crowds itself with stitches, and when you do that it creates a ripple because they don't really have anywhere to go, so they start to ruffle, if you will. So where we have our little stitch marker here, go ahead and put your hook in there. And again, you don't need a stitch marker there, I just wanted to show you so you had a visual. Okay, and we're going to grab our yarn, hook it around the hook, and then what we're going to do is bring up a loop and just tie it right on. Again, we're going to handle all these tails at the end. We're going to have several to take care of. Just get that tail out of the way and don't worry about it. All right, so what you want to do now is reinsert your hook back into that stitch. And you know what, let me zoom in so you can see better. Bring up a loop, and this time we're going to go back to our double crochet stitches. We did half doubles for our strap. We're going to go back to the double crochet for this, just to give it a little bit more volume quickly. Okay, go ahead and chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. And then in that same stitch, you're going to work 3 double crochet. Okay, so 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, and 3 double crochet. Okay. Now again, like I mentioned before, we're working into the side of this strap, so there aren't really clear-cut stitches like when you work your square, for example. See how they're all neatly lined up and it's really easy to see? This is a little bit different. So what we're going to do is locate the next hole that we see here, which is right here. Just look for the next hole, and we're going to go into that and we're going to work 3 double crochets as well. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, we're going to do this all the way down the side of the strap. We're going to do a few of these together and then we'll depart and kind of work on it on our own. Okay, go into that next hole that you see and do the same thing. 3 double crochet. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Now the next row of our ruffle is going to be a little bit easier because we'll have actual stitches this time. Okay, so hop over to the next hole of your strap and work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3. If the holes aren't perfectly evenly spaced out, which you can kind of see here, it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, it's going to ruffle up really nice and sort of blend in with itself. So we're working into the next hole, 3 double crochet. Okay, locate the next hole, 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3. And I'm calling them holes because it's like the side of a stitch, so it's not really like a defined stitch like we mentioned. Okay, go into the next one. Just try to find them the best you can. 1, 2, and 3, and then we're just going to do that all the way across, okay? So you may not see a ton of ruffling yet, but as we add more rows, it's going to start to crinkle up, okay? It is starting to get a little bit crowded on there, and you can see a little bit of a ruffle, but not a ton yet, but it will ruffle up pretty quick, okay? So let's keep going across with our 3 double crochets in each one of these side of our stitches, the holes in the side of our stitches, and then when we rejoin, we're going to add another ruffle row. All right, I'm coming up to the end of the strap here, and I'm at the stitch where the stitch marker is. So in that stitch, just leave that stitch marker in from before, but you're just going to work 3 double crochets in that last stitch there to finish up your ruffle. And I'm going to show you in just a second what our little ruffle is coming up to be. Okay, so let me just move my hook for a second So let's look at what we've done here. We have our strap and it has a little ruffle on it now. Let me just zoom out so you can see. So I want mine to be more ruffly. I want it to be a little wider. If you like this little ruffle, which I think it's really, really cute, you can just leave it as is and fasten off now. I want mine to be a little wider and flowier, I guess you could say. So let me just show you how to get started on the next row, and then you're just going to repeat these rows over and over and over again until your tank is as roughly as you would like it to be. You can really stop any time you want. So to go from row to row, we're just going to chain 3 like we did before. 1, 2, and 3, and then we're going to turn our work. Okay, so the only thing we're going to do for the rest of our rows is it's the same thing we did before. In each one of these stitches, we're going to just work 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, and 3. And just do that all the way across. So you're just going to do that for the rest of your rows. And then as you move from row to row, you'll just do it the same exact way. And so just keep working your ruffle rows until your ruffle is as wide as you would like it to be. So I'm going to keep working some rows here, doing 3 double crochets in each one of these stitches. And then when we return, what we'll do is look at how many rows and how it looks, and you can kind of see how much ruffle you want on yours as well. So keep working your ruffle rows, and when we return, we'll look at what we've done and we'll do some finish work as well. Okay, coming up to the end of row 1 for our ruffle, I'm just going to work that last double crochet, and then we're going to move on to row 2. We have a little bit of a ruffle here, as you can see, but we're going to start expanding outward. So what we want to do for row 2 of this is to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to turn our work. And then for this row, all we're going to do is work 2 double crochets in each stitch. So that first stitch, work 2 double crochet, 1 and 2. And then in the next stitch, work 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, and so forth. So you're just going to work 2 double crochets in each stitch all the way across your ruffle, and then when we rejoin, we'll move on to row 3. All right, just coming up to the end of row 2, I'm just going to work my last double crochet to finish off that row. Again, we work 2 double crochets in each stitch. Now, our little ruffle is getting a little bit wider, as you can see. We're going to extend this farther, and at this point you can really decide for yourself how wide you want your ruffle to be. You can make it really like loose and ruffly, or you can make it just a little baby ruffle like this. So I'm going to take mine for rows 3, 4, and 5, and I'm going to do the same thing for each row. And all we're going to do for rows 3, 4, and 5 is once again chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Turn our work, and then this time we're just going to work 1 double crochet in each stitch. Okay, so go ahead in that first stitch and work a double crochet. Next stitch, double crochet. Next stitch, double crochet, and so forth. So take your double crochets all the way across, 1 per stitch this time, and you're going to do that for this row, row 3, row 4, and row 5. Okay, so just repeat that for rows 3, 4, and 5, or however wide you want your ruffle. Once again, you might do row 3 and be perfectly happy with the way that looks. Okay, so I'm going to take mine, repeat row 3, row 4, row 5, 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way across. Okay, just coming up to the end of row 5, and again we worked rows 3, 4, and 5 by working just 1 double crochet in each stitch, and as you can see, we now have this beautiful ruffle, this light and kind of loose ruffle that has a really pretty drape. And I just wanted to show you here, now we'll get all this straightened out in just a minute, but I just wanted to show you how beautiful that ruffle looks. Now if you wanted yours to be a little narrower, Totally fine. You can keep repeating the rows that we just did where you just do a double crochet in each stitch, and you can take it farther if you want to, but I'm really happy with the way this looks. It looks really elegant and just lovely. Okay, so we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. So we're going to do the same thing for the other strap. And if you need to back up the video and rewatch how we do that, go ahead and do that now. But all you're going to do is tie the yarn in, and again, on the other side, now I'm already working on it on this side, but you're going to tie the yarn on the outer part of the strap. So if you hold your tank top up, now I've already, like I said, I've already started working on this side. I'm about halfway through, but you want to make sure when you tie your yarn to work your rows, let me just lay this out. It's roughly when you lay it flat on a table, but when you wear it, it drapes really pretty. You want to make sure, actually, let me zoom out. There we go. You want to make sure that you're going on the outside of the strap on both sides, okay? So go ahead and do the same thing on the other side of the strap. Back up the video if you need to do that. And we're just going to repeat rows 1 through 5, or however wide you want to make it, but repeat rows 1 through 5 on this side as well. So go ahead and do that. And then when we rejoin, we can see the whole thing. Both straps will be done. We've done the body of our tank, the straps and everything. And we're going to do some finish work next, okay? So go ahead and repeat, finish your rows for your strap, and then begin on the next strap and do the same exact thing. Just make sure you're working on the outer edge of both straps as you work. All right, just working that last stitch of the last ruffle, and I've done both, and I'm going to show you in just a second. So when you're done getting your ruffle as wide as you want it to be, we're just going to cut the yarn. Wrap the yarn around the hook to fasten off. And then all we have left to do is just some finish work. So let me just scoot all this stuff out of the way and let's look at how beautiful this is. Now I wanted to show you, let me just straighten everything out. I wanted to show you that we have our straps, but we did a total on our ruffle. We did a few of these together, but then we departed. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total rows of our ruffle. And you can see kind of the volume that it created with 5 rows. So again, if you want your ruffles to keep going, just keep working more rows beyond the 5. If you want them to be a little bit shorter and more subtle, then you can do less, okay? So we have our tank and it looks so cute. So what we need to do now is grab a tapestry needle, and I'm going to go ahead, now that we're finished, and take these stitch markers out because we don't need to mark our spot anymore. And I had some on this side as well, so let me just take these out. And again, I know I said this a couple of times before, but when you're finished, you just want to make sure you have the same number of ruffle rows on both sides of your tank and that they are on the outer edge of these straps on both sides. So we have some ends here. Let's deal with those. Now I have one here at the bottom. Let's do this one together because I'm going to go ahead and do the rest, but now I did one color. If you did multiple colors, just try to keep your ends in the same area. But I'm going to go and thread my tapestry needle, and then I'm just going to go in one direction with it, with the little tail. Just go nice and easy. We spent all this time doing this beautiful piece, and you want to just make sure your finish work is nice and neat so it complements your hard work. So I like to go in one direction, and then I know it's short, but come back in the other direction with that, and that'll help lock that into place. It's especially important with wearables with those ends. And if it does pop out, like when you launder it or as you're wearing it and you have an end that pops out, you can just kind of weave it back in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take care of these other ends, and then we'll look at the finished piece when we come back. So we have all the ends woven in, and it looks absolutely beautiful. So that's how you crochet the Granny Flutter Tank. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again.